Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Ekow Essuman versus Jack Catterall fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. This is a Patreon requested video. It's a, great fight in my opinion, which I think is going kind of under the radar and unnoticed on the undercard and being under promoted heavily on the Eubank Ben rematch undercard. So again, I'm very happy to be speaking about it. And if you want to kind of request any kind of combat sporting related content, I will try my best to get it out there for you guys if you join on the Patreon. And yeah, like I say, I really appreciate all the support I've had with it so far, and the link will be in the description. Let's get straight into this one though. And I mean, realistically, before I speak just individually about the fight, I mean, everybody has been kind of crying out recently for a British event with kind of all the best names on it. I mean, there's definitely a clear kind of debate, I suppose, or it looks obvious that the kind of whole British boxing scene have been just left without many big events, many big shows. Haven't really been pushed or promoted the same way. Matchroom have kind of gone towards their other kind of more global events, and the actual events that they are putting on in the UK aren't tremendously big. There's still a few good nights here and there, but there's not anywhere near as frequent. And again, Queensbury have been the main kind of promotion that have been consistently putting on events in the UK, but even then, a lot of them aren't really showing all the best talent in Britain. And then, like I say, they're also any of the half decent good ones, mainly the heavyweight ones, they are all being then put on the pay-per-view wall. So again, like I said, there's been a real cry out for the best names in England to be on these kind of shows, especially when we're getting such big events in America and Saudi and everything like that. These British names aren't really getting put on British soil to really sell out in front of the fans. Of course, Eubank Ben is a great fight and it's going to sell really well, but again, I feel like the undercard is not really delivering tremendously well. I think this is a fight which is the standout on the card for sure. I mean, you look for the rest of the card and it's a bit lackluster. I mean, Sam Gilly versus Ishmael Davis is a good fight. I think at the moment of recording, it's not been announced, but at the moment of recording, there's a couple fights which are in doubt, and then the Richard Riakporhe fight versus Tommy Welch isn't an amazingly big fight either. So again, like I say, there's not the best of undercards for such a big event in which it could be such a big showcasing of all British boxing talent. But like I say, this is a fight in which is still going under the radar. Like I say, it's not being promoted that well either, and again, in my opinion, the standout fight on this undercard. And this fight is another fight for Catterall, which, I mean, yet again, isn't really going to help progress his career back to a world level, as if he beats Essuman, then there's no real world champion that will be seeing that fight and think, oh, that's a great win, maybe, he should be the next guy in line or anything like that. I just don't think it really propels him up the rankings. I don't feel like any champion is going to go, that's the guy to fight next or anything like that, really. Again, it's an interesting fight to see that they took. I mean, when he fought Eubank, again, that was another fight in which, it was a good fight for kind of British boxing, but it wasn't a fight in which, was, like I say, going to propel him onto a world level. Again, he's been training in America, and perhaps he's going to come on and put on an excellent display and maybe get a big stoppage victory, and that might propel him on. But possibly there could have been, a bigger fight with a bigger name on this type of show and this type of card. Again, Essuman, no discredit to him. He's very much earned his opportunity to be here and to be in these big fights. Him himself, if he beats Catterall, then he should be pushed along more, but I just don't know if he will be. Again, that will be the biggest win of his career, Essuman, if he beats Catterall, but again, I don't know if it's gonna really propel him into world rankings like perhaps it maybe should. Essuman, for the most part, has had to work very hard to get to the opportunity he is, in here, and to get himself into this position, because he's had to go through, this is just boxing. I'm sure in the outside world, from what I've heard in interviews and stuff, and I spoke to Essuman myself, he has had, to really kind of come from, a low place to then be able to get to this position. And like I say, he's had to box himself through countless tough British level fights before, his last time out getting his big opportunity against Josh Taylor. And he went out there in his back garden and put on a very good performance. And possibly, depends on which way you look at it. Again, depends what you kind of prefer. If you prefer the slick boxing, or if you prefer the kind of rough and more aggressive side of things, you could make the possible argument that he did beat he did beat Josh Taylor better than that of what Jack Catterall did. Of course, the whole thing has come out about Josh Taylor's kind of sight issues, and obviously he's retired since then, and so, everybody can make the argument that that was a bit of a shot version of Josh Taylor. But still, like I say, for the most part, Essuman has had to work very hard to get into this position. And I mean, something else in which Essuman's had to deal with, I don't know if this is, the case with this camp. I'm sure he's had other gyms in which he's been able to train in, but his kind of home gym has been flooded and has been dealing with that. So he's had to kind of be moved around with where he's training and things like that. Not like Jack Catterall, where I'm sure he's getting the premium kind of training in America. Essuman's had to maybe work around it a bit. I'm sure he's had very good quality sparring, but again, maybe his actual home comfort gym where he likes to train is not where he's not training where he wants to be training, if that makes sense. And that could, play a bit of a mental factor, or could maybe hinder his preparations for this fight. Going on to speak about both fighters individually, though, Catterall, for the most part, I mean, he's a tricky southpaw, and that is pretty much what he is known as, being a tricky southpaw who boxes well on the back foot. He's got pretty good movement for the most part. He's got a nice kind of in and out type style, a well disciplined type fighter for sure. He holds his shape well, which is a nice thing to see. He's got very good hand speed. I think he is faster than Essuman. He's got a good balance for the most part, and he's got a high fight IQ as well. You can definitely see him, loading up his shots, setting up his shots, working on his shots. And again, like I say, that can showcase his fight IQ, and he knows when to tie up, and he knows, how to spin off and things like that. It's nice. He's definitely got that good potential. Like I say, he might be able to kind of relish in his full potential with this fight, again, depending on how well his camp is for him. And again, we will have to see if, not to say that Jamie Moore was holding him back at all, but again, maybe there was just certain limitations with what he could do, and maybe it just wasn't really the perfect fit to get him to a world level. They've worked very hard on him, Jamie Moore and the team, to get him to this level, but maybe he does need to take that next step up in his career, which I'm sure is what he is thinking going into this fight. Of course, like I say, he's well disciplined, he has good feints, he works all off his jab, he's sharp, brings his punches back well for the most part, manages distance well, he's got good counters and good timing, he can handle physicality as well, which I think is going to be something which definitely will play a factor in this fight. He is typically wanting to be a kind of slick boxer who can, fight his pace, get into his rhythm, but he can deal with physicality. He's had to deal with it in his last fight. Harlem Eubank was rushing in quite a lot and getting quite rough. And then even in especially the second Josh Taylor fight, that was quite a physical fight at times as well. And of course, Essuman, I'm sure, is going to want to make it a physical fight, of course, with him being the more natural welterweight than that of Jack Catterall. And of course, in that fight with Josh Taylor, I think Essuman being the more natural, stockier welterweight with that physical strength definitely did play a big advantage for Essuman. Catterall changes levels well. He's got very solid fundamentals. When he's able to use his fast straight shot combinations, they're very nice on the eye, and he's able to sneak his jab and these other straight shots kind of under the guard nicely as well, to be able to kind of catch you off guard. Negatives about him, I think when he plants his feet and tries to be more aggressive, that's when he can, have problems. I think he's not an aggressive fighter, and when he is fighting onto front foot, I don't think he's fully committing to his work, and I think he can be made to overreach a bit as well when he is trying to fight on the front foot. He Does take sometimes a while to get his combinations going. I think his combinations are excellent, and when he wants to get them going and when he's able to have the space to use them, they are really nice. But again, he just does take a while to get them going. He has to be in a rhythm. I mean, for the most part, he's definitely a rhythm fighter. Again, he can handle physicality, but then he needs to be able to have his own time and his own space to be able to do his work. So, for the most part, I think he will fight his best when he's in a rhythm. And of course, he's definitely a rhythm type of fighter, if you've ever heard that expression before. He allows you to be at times first and third. He can definitely load up on shots and wait for the perfect moment. And when he was fighting Barboza Jr., which of course was his loss on his record, well, his second loss on his record, he was allowing Barboza Jr. to come in, be a bit awkward with the straight shots in which he was throwing when he was throwing off his backhand first, Barboza. But again, that was catching him out. He was, not in his rhythm. He was allowing Barboza to throw first. Then he would try and come back with his own. Barboza would slip that, then come back with his next, and like I say, allowing Barboza to be first and third, which of course was what led Barboza to be able to win that fight. His hands are quite low for the most part, and he doesn't really mix in hooks that well, and I think his shot variety has always been quite restricted. His head is on the line for the most part. Again, that would be something in which I'm sure, would be kind of, he'd be trying to learn to not have that problem, and I think it would be nice to see, and it would be refreshing to see that he has improved upon that, and he's not making them, same errors, getting caught with silly shots with his head on the line. He can be a bit too relaxed at times, and he, for the most part, has to fight at his pace. He can smother in close. He does go back in straight lines. He doesn't always circle back to the center, which again, is when he starts loading up. I would like to see him actually try and use his movement to circle back a bit more. He does invite pressure, and again, like I say, does load up as well. Negatives to speak about Essuman, sorry, he himself is a pressure fighter who has an immense amount of heart and desire. There's been plenty of tough fights in which he's in where he's had to just really kind of go through any kind of adversity and just trudge through and just keep walking through it. And again, you can see how much that means to him, and he definitely does, live up to that engine nickname. There's very few fighters that truly do live up to their own, nickname that they give themselves, but I feel like Essuman definitely does, live up to the engine name. He's physically imposing and wants to rough you up. Again, he was able to do that to Josh Taylor very well. He takes you into deep waters, and that's what he did to Owen Cooper incredibly well as well, to name another fight. I was actually there ringside for that fight. That was an amazing fight to watch. But yeah, he really took Owen Cooper to deep waters after getting dropped quite badly. It was a bit of a flash knockdown, but it was a big fall from Essuman. But again, he was able to take Owen Cooper to deep waters and stop him in the final round quite dramatically as well. So again, that was an amazing fight, and it showcased that, like I say, he's going to be giving his all and taking you into them deep waters where you don't want to be. He throws in flurries quite a lot, and again, he's always able to, come in flurries out of nowhere and always just be able to give, something whenever he gets caught with a shot. He knows how to get inside and tie you up and kind of frustrate you, which again, he might be able to do well against Catterall. He's always coming forwards. He improves throughout the fight. I think, that was obvious in the Taylor fight as well. I mean, you can just look at the judges' scorecards and you can see how strong he came on in that second half of the fight, which was inevitably what won it for him, where, early on in the fight he was having a few issues, but then, like I say, he was really kind of just working, not giving up, and then, like I say, was able to pick off round after round after round later on. He lets his hands go when he can get you on the ropes. He carries a good level of power, and of course, like I say, is that more natural of a welterweight. He's always wanting to respond in bunches whenever he gets caught with a good shot. He is able to throw well when there's little space to throw. He cuts off the ring well. He's got good body work, and he does put his all into his shots. Negatives about him: he's a flat-footed fighter. I think his movement is much more limited than that of Catterall, where, like I say, I feel like Catterall has the opportunity to be able to move, and outmaneuver Essuman in this fight. Again, it will just have to wait and see if he starts loading up. Then, of course, it's not going to go in his favour. Essuman's negatives again: he kind of tries to always push himself out of bad spots. Again, he'll sit on the ropes himself, and then, like I say, he'll try and push himself out of bad spots. Again, it means he can get caught with shots. That's what he was trying to do early on against Taylor, and it wasn't always having the most amount of success. He keeps his hands out when he's going backwards, not trying to, time. He tries to just throw out a singular punch instead of actually trying to time you when he's going on the back foot. He can't really fight on the back foot too well. He can smother his work. He needs to be in close. Again, for the most part, he can really be caught by a jab and just outboxed at a mid-range. He kind of does square up quite a lot and throws combinations from quite low down as well, which can lead to him getting caught. He can be caught waiting in range too long with counters. His chin has been rocked a little bit. He's not been dropped and he has got a good chin, but he has been dropped. He got dropped against Owens Cooper, but he hasn't been dropped, significantly where he's been knocked out. But again, like I say, he has been caught with shots, and again, Taylor caught him with a nice shot as well that rocked him a bit as well. So he has been rocked a bit more than what we've seen, Jack Catterall get hurt with, but maybe that's just with him being in with maybe a bit bigger punches. I don't really know. His hand speed and speed in general is a bit more limited. He leans in with his head, and there are times where he does take gaps off where he's there to be hit, and bits of time off where he is just waiting in range and he is there to be hit, and that's when Catterall has to be there with the speed of hand to really just capitalize on them moments and come in with the faster, sharp, straight combinations. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Jack Catterall is going to be able to win this fight. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Ekow Essuman, and like I say, he has achieved a lot in his career, and I'm sure probably has overachieved in his career by his standards as well. But I think Jack Catterall has the ability to showcase that he is the superior boxer out of the two here, and I think he can outmaneuver him. I think he can outbox him. I think he can walk him onto shots. If he just doesn't start loading up and trying getting into exchanges and being aggressive on the front foot, then I think he can have a lot of success. Again, I think he can, win the early rounds, and then it's just them later rounds where he just has to stay well disciplined, and I think he will be able to do that. I think he may be made to smother a little bit, but again, I think the physicality, like I said, he is used to, so I think he will be able to win via unanimous decision. Then who could go on to fight next? Again, it'll be interesting to see. I think he really has to push on to that kind of world level scene and actually get a matchup that makes complete sense to then put him in line for a world title again. So maybe a Chukadzian could be a good option. Again, the welterweight division isn't really tremendously stacked, so he could realistically go on to fight for a world title after this. Maybe a Crocker fight could be made. I mean, they're talking about Donovan versus Paro next, so why not, if Crocker's willing to fight whilst that's happening, he could fight somebody like a Jack Catterall, and that could be an easy fight to make with Matchroom. Possibly that could happen. Or somebody like a Sissoko. Sissoko is WBC mandatory. He's not really going to fight for the WBC belt, I don't believe, anytime soon, because yes, he's mandatory, but he doesn't really deserve to be in that position. He hasn't really had a tremendous amount of, good tests. He's not really been that active, and yeah, for the most part, I think, he could be a good position, like I say, to get himself into a mandatory spot for Jack Catterall. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did, like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.